no further ado, let's get to our main topic, our main panelists. I'm about to first introduce this brother, Clifford Hutchinson. Since I've met this dude, he has been definitely a North Star in a sense of a lot of the things we talk about and does, not as a man, but as a father. I definitely trying to model, not model, but I think I just naturally soak up his game because he's just phenomenal. Not only is he working with you physically because he is a physical trainer, gym owner, just all of that. He is him too. Um, he attacks the mental too, because without mental, you can't stay that consistency to be physical. And I've seen how he handles his clients, and this is his purpose. I can see it in him. So let's have a round of applause for Clifford Hutchinson coming through. Yes, sir. Yes, brother. All love. Yes, you can pick the love seat if you in love, but you can pick the couch if you I'm playing. I can't even sit if I ain't in love. All right, next, I just recently met this brother and he was a light too. LaVontae Hill. We were actually just at an event yesterday dealing with the youth. Like, we had touched about 400 to 500 youth's minds yesterday, and it was really dope. It was really dope, and just I know him as a person and his workshop that he ran. He was throwing gems, whether the kids were receptive or not. It's hard trying to teach a bunch of malleable teenagers. But my man is a therapist, strong black man, fashionable. Look at this cat. I'm so excited to pick his brain even more. I want to have more things to say. I could have dug. I did look at his Instagram and his all that stuff, but I'm excited for this conversation to then better fill the shoes that I already imagined for this man. So let's give a round of applause for LaVontae Hill. Welcome. Yes, you can take that one. I don't want to be too centered. Yes, and if y'all want to pick up your guys' microphones, that'd be much appreciated. But
yes, sir.
First and foremost, thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you, brother.
Yes, I know I can count on you, and now I know I can count on you. What's happening?
Oh, always.
But the topic today is men's wellness, and I love that I got chosen instead of just being the cameraman. I got chosen to moderate this thing because as of late, especially after having a son, I've driven into this well of who am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? And then how's my mental doing? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that can get neglected with vices, that can get neglected with responsibilities, to get neglected with the stigma of, oh, I'm a man, I'm gonna figure it out. And I thought you had to figure it out alone, but I learned that you don't have to. You know what I'm saying? Whether you're running a business, running a household,
true,
walking a household, or just living life, any occupation. So whoever wants to answer this first, when was it, what was it that first brought to light the idea of, oh man, mental health is a thing for me?
Oh, can I start with that?
Off top. Okay. Absolutely.
Cool. So first and foremost, thank you so much. I'm grateful to be in this space, to be able to have this opportunity to speak. Thank you, everybody that came out. So
thank you, brother.
Thank you.
For me, I don't think it was ever a time where I got like the choice to choose my mental health. Growing up where I come from, I'm from Richmond, California. So a lot of stuff was really ingrained into me very early that men don't really show emotions. Men don't really talk about these different things. So for me, it was out of desperation that I realized that mental health was actually a thing. 2019, specifically September 2019, I started to have my first experience with obsessive compulsive disorder. And for me, I thought it was more cleaning. The reality was it was none of that. So mine is pure obsessional. That means that it's all in my mental. It's a lot of intrusive thoughts, things that go against your values, stuff like that. And being in that moment, it was as if my world turned upside down instantly. And being so self-aware of myself, it was a blessing for me because I was able to realize something was off. Like I was like, I don't know what it was, but something was off. My thoughts had never been the way they have been. And I've always been really attuned with myself. And in that moment, my natural response was, let's hard body. We toughen it out. We're going to get through it, right? We're not going to tell nobody. So I suffered in silence for a while. And then probably about 2 weeks down the road, I was like, man, I just can't do this. Like, I don't know what's going on, but something is weird. Like, this is different. It's just was something I couldn't describe. And me being a therapist already at the time, I didn't really think anything of it because I was like, man, I help kids all the time. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. And I'm really thinking at me as a professional, like, oh no, I know what it would be if it was something related to anxiety. However, I spoke with my supervisor. He was like, man, it sounds a lot like OCD. And I was like, nah, man, I'm not cleaning nothing. And I was like, I don't really care for that. I'm very organized, but I'm not cleaning nothing. And I did a lot more research, and I learned that OCD also goes into just it being pure obsessional. And I was like, man, so what happens when you have all these thoughts that you don't want, that don't align with you? He was like, well, that right there is a form of OCD. It's a different thing. And I was like, whoa. So this is possibly what I've been going through for this entire time. And that really struck me in that moment, that my mental health is very important, because all these things that I didn't address when I was younger, these traumas I went through, all of these things just came up in an instant. And it just hit me, and it caused my world to just shift. Everything that I thought was correct, my mind just went against it. And everything that I thought was really who I was, my mind went against it. And so me wanting to handle everything alone, I suffered in silence. And that was just, it was a hard reality. Thankfully, I had people around me, my older brother, my mom, things of that nature, that was able to give me insight. But everybody around you can be happy,
Yeah.
and they can be joyful. But when you actually are silent inside and it's really hard and crippling, it feels like nobody's there. And so that's when I first started to see, like, man, it's really important for me to go about my mental health and actually take a choice to actively and intentionally try to learn about my mental health. So I never really say I had the opportunity, and what happened to me was hurtful, but it really sparked the interest to know that I'm not above my mental health. I can't let that define me. And it really allowed for me to give myself some grace to walk into my truth of, I'm not stronger than what I think, but I'm okay to understand that I can get better and that I can get through this. And so I had to learn that by going through that. But the ways that I did it hurt me the most, because what was embedded into me, men don't cry, men don't talk about mental illness, right? The number one norm in a Black household, what happens in the house stays in the house, right? That was embedded into me. So that type of norm that I loved and that I literally lived by, that crippled me the most. And so I had to go against those values, which detached me, but it allowed me to see that so many people around me deal with this, but everybody's suffering in silence as if it's a fun thing to do. But it also made me realize that so many people can praise themselves off going through trauma, but then they talk so negatively about themselves when you're actually exposed to it.
Yeah, true.
And you have to heal.
True.
No one knows how to, because everybody around you just says, I'm good. And
Wow.
so that's when I really realized that my mental health was as bad as what it was. And it forced me to have to do something better, because I talked to myself and said, man, I deserve a lot more.
Yeah.
And I had to be okay with that. And I had to accept the fact that it's going to take some time for me to heal. And my healing may not look like everybody else's, but it's something I got to do.
Well
I got to
done.
do it for a better cause.
Well done, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, yo, Chris.
Well, yeah, man, if I was to chime in, I had a different perspective on it. And for me, when I came into mental health, I would say it was more so my association to mental strength and empowering my mind. And it happened when I was early. So my father, he told me, to make sure that I wasn't a follower and that I was a leader. So I knew that automatically there would be principles that came with that, in the way in which I would have to conduct myself based on the other individuals I saw around me and how they conducted themselves.
Yes,
So automatically I had to think different, think for myself, and be aware of what I was either involving myself in or what they were doing and how that could affect me, what consequences could come from that. So mental strength was my first access towards mental health. And then I would say, being a football player, I was single mind focused in a way that, you're one tracked towards either playing Division I football or being in the NFL. I don't think anybody can tell you that that's not possible when you're in it. The difference came when that wasn't the reality. And I had to begin to assess who I was as a person. Didn't know who I was as a person. So to become reliant on self, to become dependent on self, I had to know thyself. I had to begin that research. So I started with my history. I started with more about who I knew myself to be in my past. And it brought me into a better perspective of what I needed to do for my legacy. And football wasn't in it. And then I became a husband. So the responsibility of taking care of someone else also made me be disciplined in ways that I need to show certain strengths mentally. When I became a father, I had more individuals that relied on me, so it required more self-discipline for me to be there for them. When I became a business owner, now I have the people that rely on the services that I provide, and I have to be sharp enough in my mind to do that. So where I realized it is when I would tell my visions to my mentors, and they would say, "Oh yeah, that's not sustainable." And I would say, "Well, what do you mean? All I got to do is work every day. All I got to do is show up early and leave late. All I got to do is outbeat the man that's in front of me. That's it. That's the rhythm." And they said, "Well, based on that algorithm, you'll fail. You'll break your body down and you'll lose all the things you love." And I couldn't see it because I didn't understand it, because I only knew the concept of application. Just working, just doing it, just showing up. So it wasn't until I began to break down, I began to realize that all that I said I can do, because we have the capabilities to do, I wasn't able to do it. I wasn't able to do it. So the safe space was when I realized that in my, I guess, keeping to myself my challenges, when I shared it with people, let's say other brothers, and we created an environment similar to this where there was no judgment.
Yes.
They're going through the same thing I'm going through. And the relatability helped me tremendously. And I had no idea that it was just the sharing, that I wasn't doing nothing that anybody else wasn't doing. I wasn't going through anything else that anybody else wasn't going through. I was just keeping it to myself. And the pressures that I felt because I thought I can do it all, I didn't want to share with anyone. So I think for me, mental health came when I got the ability to talk, learn, listen, and then all the other things leading up to that, knowing I had to focus on myself, knowing I had my family as my responsibility. So just being strong in my mind. And then I think as I grew my mental strength, that led to me figuring out what mental health was. Because as you lift weights for your physical muscle, you have to nourish that after a while, or after using your muscles to a certain point, they fatigue. So I may go in it hard and my mind is shut down with all the intention and all the spirit and all the will, and it just shut down. Not knowing that, oh yeah, my physical body plays a role, my rest plays a role, my diet plays a role, because my will is strong, my mind is strong, because I built that first. Health came later. Does that make sense? Okay.
So that's snap that up. Indeed, indeed. No. So I want to ask you this question too, because you are a physical trainer. And strength is something that comes up a lot when we're talking about anything man. Do you think you can find strength? Do you think there's strength in being soft as a man? Like how do you show yourself softness? How are you gentle with yourself?
Well, let me just say this. Some of the strongest creatures on earth are women.
Off
And
top.
I learn a lot from them. But they're also sensitive and they're emotional. But we're not. But we are in different ways. So I've learned from women to embrace more those sensitivities and those emotions. And as a result of that, I could see how strong I am in one, being aware of the things that I need to work on, but also being vulnerable and being transparent. So strength is in restraint, like we talked about, but if you can truly be vulnerable, then you can be strong. I think to be naked is to just be really self-aware of who you are. And if you feel uncomfortable in that state, you know, it's based on how you feel. I think for me, I wouldn't perceive it as weakness. I would look at it as an opportunity to be stronger in a place where other people may not show that type of strength. I show vulnerability because I know that people will come to my aid. I know people will help me. If I'm willing to push a car, I think more people will stop and try to help me push that car. Or if I try to jump it with jumper cables and no car, somebody might try to help me. So I just speak to the things I need help with. And women taught me that. My wife taught me that. My mom taught me that. My daughters taught me that. My clients taught me that. It's not weakness, it's strength.
Yeah.
As a man, you keep a lot of energy inside and it'll boil over and it'll show up in spaces where it doesn't need to exist. So if you can outlet those emotions and you can outlet that energy in an environment where it's healthy or it's productive, then that's okay too.
Yeah.
So feel how you feel, say what you need to, but be productive in that way.
I received that. I want to add on top of that. It sounds like you weren't always aware that there was strength and vulnerability, and then that consistency and being aware of that by way of your wife or being put in scenarios where you had to you had to communicate. Because I can definitely say that my fiance showed me what communication really means, and I'm a poet. And I'm like, yo, I thought I could communicate, but when you get lost in innuendo and dancing around the topic instead of being direct. Like that's a big, that requires consistency.
Yeah, you're speaking to my honesty because you're right. I was too strong and I was too willing to take on more than I was supposed to. Yeah. And I felt that I could because that's what you have to do. I think as men, we're given a responsibility, and it's not to ask for help. Is to figure it out. And in figuring it out, you may come up with a challenge, and that challenge may be almost impossible to complete, but you have to figure it out.
Absolutely.
And I think for that reason, no, I didn't share. I didn't look for anyone to help me, because in those teachings, in those lessons of figuring out, you realize that when you really have nothing else, you only have that yourself to rely on. You do have individuals in your life that truly do provide for you and care for you. But the real lesson is in self-reliance, self-discipline in that way.
Self-love. You can't love somebody else, you don't love yourself.
So yeah, it is harder, but you have to do it. And in figuring out, you learn great lessons. So yeah, it maybe sharing later what I figured out was helpful, but in the process of trying to figure out, I feel that it built me and it built my character. And is it hard to hold on to that at times? Absolutely.
Yes.
But do I walk in that space to where I allow it to represent me? Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. So I let my challenges be my badges of honor.
Yes, sir.
But that's me.
And I receive that. And I want to hop on over to LaVontae, because I know you rely on sharing your story, right? And in sharing your story and being a therapist, you got to show some sense of consistency. Right. And in showing that consistency comes what became new to me was the idea of self-love, right? So I'm tying consistency and self-love together. What is one way, or what are ways that you maintain that sustain, or how do you cultivate a healthy mindset? Like, what does that consistency look like of self-love, or however you may cultivate that mindset?
So for me personally, it's a little bit different. I definitely would say everybody's different, so everybody has their unique way of showing it and going through it. For me personally, I think that self-love looks very different for me each and every day. I really started to understand what vulnerability is, and it was very difficult for me to even get to that piece where me sharing my story, I used to think that was like, it was an everyday thing. I was desensitized to it because, oh yeah, you just from the hood, you go through hood experiences, everybody goes through that. However, when I started to really share about it, it was like, wow, you go through a lot of similar things. You're just the only one talking about it. Right. And also for me, when it came down to like mental health and building all of these things for myself, it was hard to be vulnerable because I felt like I was less than a man. Because a man is a provider, a man is the strongest, a man is the person that puts everything on the table, but they also don't talk about how that man goes into that room and they're also alone with themselves when they don't show everyone, but they show those tears to themselves. Right. So that was really difficult. When my tears, I wasn't showing them in my room anymore. I was showing them outside. Yeah. And that was really hard for me. And I really beat myself down because I was like, dude, you're not this person you said you were. You no longer this person from the hood who everybody knew was the
You're supposed to
golden
be
child,
tough.
right? You're supposed to be tough. But then I redefined what it meant to love myself. I redefined that my love is not always just a feeling, it's an action. So by me being able to get up and say, man, I'm tired today, that's a form of self-love. For me going into the mirror, it was 2023 was the first time I looked into the mirror and was like, man, I love myself. And it was because I was able to understand that I went through all these trials and tribulations for 3 years. I had nobody but myself. Yeah, I had everybody there, but I had me. I woke up to me. I went to bed with me. I struggled with me. I went through apathy with me. And the thing is, we still here. And so I had to understand that if I don't redefine what it means to love me, then I can't expect for anybody to love me back. And so when I get up now, it's an intention. And that's a big piece. You have to be intentional at telling yourself that you love you. And it might sound self-centered, it might sound selfish, it might sound lame. But when you get up, I'm telling myself, man, we earned this morning. We got up and we did a run.
We earned this
Right?
morning.
Right. I'm earning my sunrise every single day. And the thing is, it's those small things that's going to sit with me because I know what it feels like to be at the coldest part with myself. When my brain, the one thing that was my best friend, it got me through everything. I feel like that turned against me. I feel like I was alone forever because I've always been a thinker. And so when my mind was no longer able to think and align with what I felt was always me, that crippled me because nobody ever told me that, oh, dude, your thoughts, you get thoughts that don't mean nothing. So every thought that I got, I was like, dude, this is me. My thoughts are saying I hate myself, so I must do that. Right? I get up, my first thought, and it was the hardest thing. First thought I got up in the morning, I remember it vividly. September 22nd, got up in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, got up. First thought on my mind was suicide. And I'm like, why? I'm like, what's going on? Something's wrong with me. And the thing is that I was in such a low state and I didn't want to acknowledge it. But I was like, dude, if I love myself, how can I think about taking my life? But the reality was like, dude, you didn't went through so much trauma and now you at this age and it's finally telling you, hey, you need some help.
Yeah.
Hey, what you doing toughening out is not going to get you through it. Being resilient is not theory. We're no longer in a need for survival. Now we want to live. And so I got to this point of where I was like, man, I'm gonna get up and say I love myself.
Come on.
I'm gonna walk out and be like, man, you really put that on today. Right? You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna give myself that praise and that love because at the end of the day, I have to make sure that I know that I love me, regardless if I fail, regardless if I go outside and I mess up. Even when I have these moments where I mess up, I'm making it an intention to say, oh, how you feeling right now? Man, it suck. And I'm being honest. You got to be honest with yourself. And I was so honest and it hurt so bad because I was like, why am I beating myself down? But in reality, it was, no, dude, you really trying to understand what's going on for you. I didn't have distractions at a certain point. It was a point in time where I was like, I can't even sit here. I used to put on lo-fi music. I was like, man, I just can't be alone with my thoughts. But then it was me being alone with my thoughts that got me to this point to understand, dang, dude, you don't love yourself like you think. Because you can't even have a bad day and feel like you human. You feel like you got to be Superman every single day. Why is that? That comes from my childhood. Why is that? Because everybody always said, you get it done. So now that I'm not getting it done, now am I less of myself?
Peeling the layers back.
Right.
And I had to do it simply in that moment, in that entire time. And I had to understand for so long in my life, I became what it was that I attained. I was an athlete. I was a scholar. So when they took that away, when I was no longer in school, got my master's, everything, what am I now? Basketball was taken away quick. I was no longer, who am I? I'm no longer LaVontae, but I didn't understand who I was. So I had to start learning, who am I without this? Who am I without the jewelry? Who am I if people say, don't give me acknowledgement? Am I still myself? I had to tell myself, I used to make recordings like, man, I love you. I was like, you look good, you feeling good. I'm like, but I'm saying to myself, this is so odd. This is so weird because it's abnormal to me. No man's ever telling you to tell yourself you love them. They tell you, hey, tighten up, toughen up, get ready. We about to go do this, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, men are supposed to provide. I can't provide and also understand that I'm tired. I can't provide and also know that, man, I want to feel peace when I get home.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to feel chaos. And so I had to understand that my brain was the most chaotic piece for me. And in order for me to get some ease within that, I had to redefine and understand, how do I get to these points? How do I bring myself out of it? What does it mean when I'm at my lowest? And what does it mean when I'm at my best? And how do I learn how to love all versions of that and not feel like I'm a horrible person? And so I learned how to adapt to grace. I understood that if I'm going to talk to myself, I can't be mean all the time. We are our biggest critic, but guaranteed we can be the person that makes ourselves our own prison. And so I understood that I can't tell myself every single day, shut up, get it done. And sometimes I got to be like, dang, dude,
Sit down.
you was doing a lot
Sit
today.
down, self.
Let's just sit down for a few
Right.
minutes, right? And so I had to be okay with that. And that was a big piece. That was a vulnerability where it wasn't always the outside world that I was afraid of being vulnerable with. I was afraid of being vulnerable with myself because I felt like I was betraying everything that was embedded into me and instilled into me as a kid, because who is telling me that around me? And so that's how I found that self-love. That's how I continue to do it. But it's an active practice and it's not easy, but it's something that I know I have to do, because if I don't do it, I know what it felt like to be where I was at 5 years ago. I know I can get back to that place. Now that I know where my mind can take me to, and I know that I'm not invincible, I'm not Superman, I know that my mind can also be my kryptonite. So if I want to make sure that that never happens again, I have to make an intention every single day, no matter how uncomfortable, to make sure that I know, regardless how the days go, no matter what anybody praises me with, I get up and I say, hey, LaVontae, I'm proud of you.
Come on.
Boy, you did your thing, and we good. Let's rock.
That's smooth.
Well done, sir.
Love
Well
that.
said.
Love that. I got a question. I got a lot of questions. What's your first act when you know you slipped in that consistency?
Ooh.
What's your first act in getting yourself back up into that consistency? Because, man, let me tell you, I'm a repeated offender when it comes to slipping and not knowing how to grab my bearings. Okay, I did this for 2 weeks straight. I told myself I'm going to do this for 2 weeks straight. I'm not going to do it today.
Ooh.
Tomorrow comes, I didn't do it yesterday. I'm going to beat myself up. What's that one thing you do to get back onto that consistency train?
So I'm very consistent with, I started to build a lot with my internal dialogue. My internal relationship has expanded so much where I'm having these conversations with myself on a daily where I'm like, man, what people think I'm odd because I'm talking to myself so much. But I had to remember that I was in my head so much throughout that entire time going throughout therapy and everything. I was in my head every single day, all the time, obsessing. And so now I'm in these moments where I'm like, I'll tell myself, yeah, you slipping, right? You really falling. But I had this conversation with myself literally last week. And I had said it because I was like, man, I'm stepping into a new journey. I'm doing all this stuff, but I'm not doing things as much as I know I can. I had to sit down and be honest with myself and say, man, I was like, you used to be a scholar. So everything that you obtained, you knew that it was coming. If you put in the work, if you put in the time, you knew that you was going to graduate. If you put in the work, you put in the time, you knew you were going to achieve. Right. And so now that I'm doing this stuff and now I can't see the goal, it's no longer there. Now it's harder for me to excel in this because I'm the only one pushing me. So I said, let me go back to what I know. If I love school as much as I did, I love being a scholar. Okay. Well, now what I need to do, I'm going to set out 1 hour like I'm in class to make sure I'm doing what I need to do. This is what I'm doing right here because I know if I excel in school, let me go back to what I know. Yeah. Why would I push away from that? So when those moments I start to slip, hey, I'm getting back into it. Cool. Class session. Let's go. Ding, ding. Teacher is me. Let's get it going. Right. And I'm honest with it. Right. I'm honest with it.
Yeah.
Because it's important because I have to realize that, dude, if you start to really dwell into like, oh man, you're not doing this, you're not doing that cycle continues. That is, and I can be negative all day long. If somebody said, man, your shoes are ugly, I'm gonna think about that more than I say, man, I look good today.
Fact.
Right?
I appreciate that.
You gotta know that, right? Fact. You have to understand that your mind is more inclined to go to the negative, and I know mine is real negative. So if it's something that I'm not doing, I get to this point of where I'm like, all right, I was listening to this podcast and he said something so pivotal. He was like, man, I write down what is one thing I regret from yesterday. And that one thing that I regretted, I do that the next day. Oh, if I regretted that I didn't start, I'm doing it tomorrow. And I'm okay with that. And we can do slow steps, baby steps, but I know I'm doing one thing that I didn't do yesterday.
1% better than the day you were before.
Yep.
Compound interest.
Yeah.
All throughout it.
I look at it like chicken noodle soup and medicine.
Yeah.
You know, like chicken noodle soup is for your comfort. You got to be graceful to yourself.
Yeah.
But you require medicine too. So if you're sick, if you're enabled, if you're weak, you're not performing at the level in which you should. You have to analyze what your requirements are. Where are you lacking? One, you can't beat somebody up that's sick, so you got to take care of yourself in that way. You might need some rest. You might need some water. You might just need a hug and a blanket. But afterwards, you're going to take that medicine that don't taste too good. I think that's the realization of where you need to correct yourself or at least the things in which you may not have done as well. So that goes back to like self-realization, I guess, being able to analyze oneself and what they're doing. So I think you have a goal ultimately, and you have a strategy to accomplish that goal. You plan to stick to the strategy to accomplish that goal, but often, you know, it may not happen. Yeah, man, it's just finding a space where you're kind enough to yourself and knowing that, okay, I did make a mistake.
Yeah.
But where are the areas in which I can improve?
Yes.
And then begin to make those improvements. Where we may fail is that we are too hard on ourselves when we make those mistakes. But ultimately, mistakes are inevitable.
Yes, sir.
So they will happen.
Yes, sir.
It's not a matter of if, but when.
When.
Yeah. So, so just to know that, you know, it's to know that if you are responsible in any way to a lack of productivity or performance, then analyze where you can improve. Yeah. And if there are spaces in which you can take notes or re-strategize. I mean, my father's a fighter, so he tells me that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Easy.
I've heard that too.
Easy.
So it's really about when it begins to, you know, get difficult for you and your plans don't work and your strategies don't work and you know, all your preparation doesn't work, you know, how do you respond still? Well, you're kind to yourself. You give yourself a blanket and you know, but you take the medicine. You do the difficulty, you do the challenge, you know. And I think for me, that's what's always been the difference is I'll give myself now more chicken noodle soup than I used to. It used to be medicine or just deal with it.
Yeah.
Or no medicine.
Yeah.
You know, you'll get better if you just get stronger. But you need medicine because you're not feeling well. And what I look at that as is just better preparation and more research, better understanding of what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
It's hard sometimes because you think you know, but failing is a reality that you didn't. So take the medicine for what it is. Get better and go back.
Improve.
So, improve.
I know both of you guys are in occupations of servitude, physical, mental. I'm just going to put that kind. I know y'all probably do both, but I'm just going to separate it for now. And always serving somebody else, what support do you find or try to find or do you lean on when you realize that you haven't been supporting yourself? Because you're always giving, right? You give an instruction on how to improve your body.
Can I answer this real quick? Yeah. When you begin to be selfless, right? Like you truly care about something else and someone else and other people and their well-being, you don't consider yourself. You don't consider how you feel and what you need. And I only say that because, yes, there's a passion that drives you because in caring for others fulfills you. If someone is hungry and you feed them, that fulfills you. If someone is cold and you give them blankets and you warm them, that fulfills you. If they can't see and you give them light and they have awareness, that fulfills you. So to provide that, that's gratification. So you want to give that to individuals. Would it be the clothes off your back because they're cold? Maybe. Would it be the food off your plate because they're hungry? Maybe. Would it be your candle to help you see because they can't? Maybe. But that's the nature that I've been built with. Is that right? Now knowing, no. I was giving more water, right? Therefore, everyone had a cup and I was just pouring water. So in doing that, I would eventually become empty, right? But what I've learned is in my light, in my education, in my awareness, in my knowledge, as a candle, I could light 100 candles and still stay lit. Nothing will affect my flame, right? I could take the wick of my candle and light your candle and light your candle and light 100 candles and my flame doesn't go out. So instead of just truly giving in a sense of my physical body, right? Being there, being present, physically lifting, like really using myself versus using my intellect to be there as a support, to be there as a mentor, to be there as a helpful voice, as an encouraging word of like, you know, you look good today.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So I think for me, the weight that I bared in helping people was taking on a larger responsibility than I needed to. So when it came to really helping, it was doing what was also helping me and helping them. And it wasn't just taking on their burden. It was like being more of an insight to things that I can see, my perspective or what it is I've experienced, and share and give that to them. And what I've seen as a result of that versus helping someone move their home and literally pick their stuff up versus telling them to how to compartmentalize their mind and emotions. Oh yeah, it's been extremely beneficial. So if I'm helping, I'm not helping in a way to where I'm giving too much of everything that I have for myself, but I'm helping from a space that won't take from me. And I don't know if that's selfish, but I want to keep giving.
Yes.
And I don't want my giving to fall short. You know, I want it to always be available.
Yes.
So that means I need to keep my light. I need to keep it. I need to keep my flame strong. You know, I can flow. I could be like water, but eventually I'll run out. But to keep the light is to mean I keep the flame, keep the knowledge, keep the information. So that's what I share. That's what I provide. And if I answer the question at all, yeah, you know, I really will give my life to people to help them. And I've done that since I've started my business. And I think that's why I am successful, because it's not a value from a monetary space that I benefit from. These people give me amazing gratification from what they say they receive from me and how I'm able to help them. So I show up every day. I wake up at 4:00 in the morning to show up every day, and I'm tired. I go without food, and I still dedicate what I have to for them. I do it all the time, man. And I know that I require, it was funny. It's not even funny, but you know, we're going to open up because it's a space for that. Right.
Yes, sir.
But you give me the opportunity to not have to feel so strong, you know? And I show up for all of them every day in moments that are difficult to show up, but I do it because I know that I'm providing something for someone. Yes, and that responsibility is great. Does it take away from my space at times? Absolutely. But I've always told myself this: the payout will come later. And I know that in the now and in the present, there is a need to focus on me and the things that I require. And I know that because the better I am for other people. But it's the other people, man, that really fuel me, that drive me.
I would say for myself, I look at myself as, and I started looking at myself this way probably a few years back. I'm a wounded healer, straight up, through and through. I'm a wounded healer. And the reason why I say that is because I have a lot of scars from trauma. You may not see them physically, can see some of them, but mentally, emotionally, I have a lot of traumas and scars that have came from my past that I wear on me. That's why I make sure I tell people where I'm from, because all of these things are so deeply rooted into myself. And these stories, these experiences that I went through, I talk about them so vividly, and I talk about them in such an expressive way so that I can let someone understand that story that you're going through, I understand it, but guess what? You can get through it, right? I feed into that. I love to call myself a light bringer because I have it. And I know that through and through. I also know it's only one of me. And so I have certain moments, like I started to get up really early in the morning because I was talking to one of my good friends. He said, well, nobody needs you at like 4:30 in the morning. I'm like, you right. Don't nobody need me at 4:30 in the morning. It's like your mom don't, your brother don't. Nobody needs you. So the earlier you wake up, the more time you got for yourself. And I'm like, man, well, I ain't doing no 4:30, but yeah, let's do 5. Let's do 5. We can do 5.
I tried.
Right? And so doing that and making it into an intention, I was like, man, in these moments, I just got this for me. Like I'm just here for me. And being in this space, I know everybody gonna want me at 8 o'clock. I know at 9 o'clock, I don't have no time for me. But if I can make it consistent that when I'm up in the morning, 5 o'clock, and I'm tapping in with myself, first thing I say, thank the Most High for waking me up. You didn't have to do that. I go to the mirror and I'm like, I'm proud of you, boy. You got up. You got up at 5. You good. I'm like, I'm feeding into myself. But then also I'm like, man, this is a heavy weight that I got to carry. And I've always been somebody that wanted to help someone else. I've been a mentor since I was young. I was taking in youngsters just because it was like, that's what you do in the hood. You know that where you from, it's so easy to stay there, bro. Do you know how hard it is to leave? So you want those people around you to understand that, man, it's a different option we got. We don't have to stay here. So I've always been a big brother figure. So I've always took on the weight, whether I've wanted to or not. So I know that comes with me. It's embedded into my makeup as a person. I also understand that just being there for everyone else doesn't work for me, because at a certain point, I feed into you and it's nothing else for me to give myself. And if I'm not good for me, how can I be good for you? So it's going into these moments of where I know, yes, for a fact, this is my purpose, but also I have a right to give myself that time for me. I have to get up in the morning to make sure I'm sitting with myself. And I also feed into myself by understanding that, okay, when you get up, me setting certain boundaries, and I'm gonna be real, it's hard with the boundaries because I got big heart problems. Because I want to help. I want to help. I want to serve. I want to make sure I can do that, because for real, I know this is where I'm supposed to be. I know what it's like to be cold in this world and to feel that, to go through that. But in reality, I can't take on your trauma. I can't take on your pain, but I can go through it with you. I can do that. So I understand that with me having this purpose, me having this job that I have to do to help others, I also understand that I got a job for myself, and I can't put myself second no matter how much I want to. I know it's innate for me to do it, but I also know when I'm trying to do for everybody else, it's not only me being in my purpose, it's a trauma response. It's me going back to the same space, and man, I'm back in the hood where it's like, you got to do this and save this person, but I'm not Superman everywhere.
I received that.
I can't always be that, and I got to be honest with myself to the simple fact that when I go to help these people, I'm good and I can do that, and I can present as fully me, because I can't come halfway in. Because if I do that, you're going to tell me a problem that might identify with something I went through, and now I feel like we the same, and it's not. Because it takes away from you. Now we trauma bonded, right? Now it's like, you know exactly what I feel, but you don't. Because you took that experience one way, I took it one way. I got through it one way, and so did you. But now that I ain't fed into myself throughout the day, now I'm feeling like, man, everybody here, we all through the same traumas. Right. We all there. But when I have these moments of realizing, hey, take a step back. It's okay that these people suffer a little bit, because you got to get yourself right, so that when they do suffer, you go through that process with them. Yes. You can go through the journey with them. And I'd rather do that than to be that person that has the big heart problems that take on everybody weight.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Everybody, you got to.
Big heart problems.
Because it's real. It's big heart problems. I'm a people pleaser when it come down to me serving, because I love it. I love it.
That gratification.
Right. Look what
it's that gratification.
It feeds you, right? If you do something well for somebody, you like, man.
What goes around comes around.
Right? Facts. And you know that, right? But when that cycle keeps continuing, and it always comes around, but you never stop that cycle just to say, man, what if I took a pause for a second?
You made a good point, man, about waking up in the morning and looking at yourself and saying that you look good and you brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
You make a good point, man, because you show up for people and you show up for them because you care. But behind all of that, you have done the work behind the scenes.
You human.
And I didn't know that we would talk about the behind the scenes work.
Got to.
Man, every trainer is going to go in the bathroom before they start the class, look themselves in the face and say, you can do it.
Yep.
Come on.
Listen to me. Listen.
Responsibility.
Listen. The trainer is about to train a class. We got people coming for us. We're going to go in the mirror. We're going to look in the mirror and say, hey, you got this.
Facts.
Trying to convince ourselves, because the other mind is saying, I don't know what I'm about to do.
That's that positive self-talk, though.
They are caffeinated and ready to go, and I'm still tired.
But
you get it. So I agree. Yes.
Yes.
So to his point, we are doing that all the time.
Man.
I'm doing that all the time, brother. I'm doing that in my car. I'm doing that. My wife knows when I pull up sometimes after work, I'll be in the driveway. And that's kind of like she tells me, you need to decompress.
Don't bring that energy in this house.
She says, don't be a coach don't be coaching us in the household, right? So honestly, because I'm so intrinsic into what I'm doing, where it's just mode, and then I drive and I'm still in the mode. And
you gotta shift gears.
So I didn't even realize what a decompress is.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean just get lost for a second and
stop thinking. If possible.
Like, just be there. You're doing so much for so many people all the time. You got to be ready, be on point, say the right thing, do the right thing, keep everybody safe, no mistakes, always perfect. And you got to be on time too, and look good,
man.
And feel good, and do the right
and they come home and do the same thing consistently.
Nice to everybody.
Get the same consistency.
They talk good about you when you go.
Facts.
You know, and so yeah, man. Like the moment to say, you know, I'm gonna Netflix and chill, or I'm just gonna kind of like, you know, I don't know if it's playing video games. Me, I'm an inline skater, so I rollerblade, so I do aggressive skating. So when I skate, to fixate myself towards a grind or a jump or coming off a ramp or anything, if I'm anywhere else in my mental, I'm a fall. Yeah. I'm 37 years old. I can't afford to fall.
Yes, sir.
So automatically, I'm putting myself in a position where I know now that in this space, I don't have the weight of being a father and all the responsibilities that come with that financially and providing, the weight of being a business owner and all that comes with that. Yeah. The fact that I have 100 clients, being a dad and raising my daughters against everything that exists out there. All I got to do is skate up and down this ramp.
That's that grace.
Successfully.
That's that grace.
And it brings me back to a perspective where now when I analyze the things that I need to, that either were pressure based or a need because I have a responsibility to others. Well, I freed that thinking up now to be able to do that. And one other thing I can say is if I give you a lot of items in your hands, you won't be able to hold all of them if I tell you then to go pick that chair up. You'll have to put some of the items down in order to pick up that chair. So ultimately what we have sometimes is just too much. But I found that if you writing it down, right, will free it from your thinking, place it in a space that goes away from needing space,
come back
and then allow you to now have that space to figure out whatever you need to figure out. It's kind of like in your house where you try to have guests, but nobody knows where to sit. You clean up everything, and now all of a sudden you just got all this opportunity and all this space. I think it's a lot like that for your mind. If you take out, I need to see her at this time. I need to call my mom. I need to, train this person. I need to send out this email.
That's a skill. That's a skill.
Write it down, take it out of your brain, and then when you analyze your thought in the morning, because what I do in the morning is when I meditate, like you said, on the things I did before. I think you said earlier, like, what failures did I make? What I do is I say, well, what notes did I take? So when I go to the notes, I say, well, you said you were supposed to text Gerald yesterday. So the first thing I see at 5 a.m. is you better text Gerald right now. So I think that's part of it for me. That's that type of balance. That's that type of discipline that I have.
But man, so many gems. Let me surmise this real quick. Identifying what's chatter and what's good talk inside your head. Self-talk is important because you manifest in them thoughts into reality and you become them thoughts. If it's negative thoughts, you become them negative thoughts. Have a great wife or support system. Honestly, if they don't tell us to stop, I feel like they in tune because they know already we bringing this luggage back into the house. I don't want you bringing that there. And then it's the responsibility of, man, you giving these people outside this household the better you, and you coming home and you bringing bare minimum Ale. Oh, that's not cool. So honestly, that open that conversation, that communication I was talking about, y'all are great at it.
That's that medicine right there.
That's
ain't it?
that medicine. But then, because I got to wrap this up, because we got like time for 2 questions. I for sure let this linger on a little longer than I should have. But yeah, but hearing that's that support also I was talking about. And okay, now what does it look like to adjust that? Are you wholeheartedly going to take those words as a man, put aside ego of you know better, and then and don't make the excuse of, oh no, I'm not. Well, clearly you're doing something because they're saying something, right? But I love the and then writing down things to come back to it later. As a person that has self-diagnosed ADHD, I learned the value in writing, even though I'm a poet, writing and coming back to it. But the trick is to come back to it.
Yes, it is.
But I absolutely love you guys for coming through. Thank you so much. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions before I let y'all mingle and buy some of this. Buy some tea by Ja Urban Roots, or some cosmetics and other things by Earth Tones. But is there any questions from the crowd you guys may have for one of our panelists? Any questions at all?
Oh man.
Yes, sir. Could you him? I want him to. Thank you so much. I don't got that many mics.
All right. So, what did you do to start identifying the traumas? Like to say, like, oh, there's one.
I love that question.
Okay, and then I'm assuming through your talks that's how you started to resolve them. But how did you start to identify them? Because I think a lot of times we walk through life and you're like, that's just how I am.
You just missed the cue.
Right. And so, how did you identify them?
Great question for that one. So a big piece for me, in a lot of my resolving and putting them at the forefront, they don't really come through the talks. They're more so, I really had to sit down and just understand what was going on for me, right? Some of these things that I was desensitized to, violence in the neighborhood, gunshot violence, right? People were shooting, all these things. I wasn't fearful of it. So I was like, whoa, this is not normal for a lot of people, right? Like, why is that happening for me? I had to understand I was desensitized to it. It didn't make that big of an impact to me because I was always exposed to it. And so it's sitting down and like, okay, my thoughts are more negative than positive. Why? Okay, well, in my neighborhood, I was exposed to a lot of negativity, but I also know as a human being, we have more negative thoughts than we have positive. I'm going to focus in on the negative more than I do the positive. Okay, already know one thing, right? But also building the knowledge of what's the language, right? And so when we think about negative thoughts, we think about negative thinking traps. Well, the real word for that is cognitive distortion. And so I built an understanding of what that was. What is that? Overthinking. That's big for me. I've been doing that all my life. Oh, I thought it was something that was my savior, right? Well, that's a thinking trap. It's great when I do it, but it also paralyzes me. So that's one. Then I was like, man, I always say always or never. Well, that's black and white thinking. I'm absolutes, right? I'm speaking in absolutes. Okay, here goes another one. Where does that stem from? Well, you got to be absolutely correct of where you go to, because if you don't, where I was from, you die. I'm understanding where that comes from now. And so it's understanding the knowledge. And when I got the knowledge of it, of what was going on, then that allowed for me to now, okay, let me go through it. Well, man, when's the last time you said you like yourself? I feel like I do. Or you like yourself when you put on great stuff, but what about when you just get up and you don't do something? Well, I'm not feeding into myself a lot. I'm not affirming myself. Okay, there goes another one. I need to start doing that a little bit more, because I know if I tell myself, hey, Hill, you made it throughout the day, I feel a lot more better, even though I didn't do all this other stuff. But I'm like, man, I feel good that I got through the day, right? And then I also look at these things that I felt like were normal reactions or normal daily tasks, right? Getting back home. For a black man, I'm gonna be real. Getting back home is a blessing to me, because there's a lot out there in that world that gets real cold. And I had to realize that my opinion about the world was so screwed because of how my upbringing was. It wasn't my home dynamic, but I was treated like a prince at home. But then when I got outside of the house, shoot, I was a commoner. It was reality that was exposed to me. So I had to see that I have a lot of biases, but I also am very judgmental. And not only am I judgmental to others, I'm judging myself. So I'm judging myself so much because if I don't judge myself, I feel like everybody else is doing it. So I got to know all my faults before they bring it to my attention, because it's going to hurt my soul if they do it. Right. And so I sat down and started really thinking about this stuff, really started to have an intention. I started to do, like, I run and I don't have music. I don't do anything because I started to see how negative my thoughts were. And so that really put everything at the forefront. Dude, you beating yourself down every single time. What happens if you just stay with it? well, I got through it. Even though I said, man, you just should turn around. I got through it. And so I started to really learn about myself. I'm sitting down. You know how hard it is to just sit with nothing in the room and just be like, bro, I'm here. Well, you got all these thoughts to say you suck. But I'm like, I'm cool though. I'm good. To really do that, I had to have an intention. I had to also have some courage to understand that right now, me having this fear, that's cool. But I'm brave enough to do something that not a lot of people are doing. And I'm good on that. I'm standing on it because this means a lot more to me. The fact that I'm here in this moment when I'm vulnerable with myself. And I also have to understand distractions. They become avoidance at a certain point.
Absolutely.
And my distractions, I distracted myself a lot because I was afraid to sit alone with my thoughts. And I was afraid to be alone with myself because when I grew up, you was never really alone. You had your peoples around me, so you always went to your friends. They feed into you. But when it got to a certain point when I was an adult, I'm in my house by myself all the time. Well, ain't nobody else here. And I don't want to be around my boys all day long. I'm an adult now. I ain't trying to do that. Like, I'm cool. So I
gotta save this money.
Right. Like, I had to realize these things and started to really actively just understand them and really say, okay, does this service me anymore? I had to unlearn what has gotten me throughout life because it no longer had a value that was going to propel me to who I wanted to become or how I wanted to perceive life and also my mental. And that's where it really started for me.
Clicked.
Good.
Yes.
Man, as a trainer, what we do to discover discrepancies in clients is we put them through a variety of movements, and we'd like to see where functionally they have inadequacies. Based on these inadequacies, we know that there's a weakness in that space. And I don't want to associate trauma to weakness, but essentially saying that as a result of the trauma, something has happened, a wound. So self-realization is self-analysis, to look within yourself and to peel the layers back. So he said something that was honest, so I'll say something that's honest. If I left my workspace to not be in a 9-to-5 corporate environment, is because I wanted to take control of the space in which I felt was taken from me.
Yes.
That's why I'm a business
100%.
owner. We're being honest, right? If I'm wanting to be a coach, it means that I feel that I lack the ability to be in control. So therefore, I'm in a position of control. I think what he's saying is he's saying realize your choices and realize the things you've done and know that has a space from trauma. See, I always thought trauma to be violence, aggression, a beat down.
Yes.
Trauma is a physical wound. That's what but I didn't know trauma was like
emotional.
I had no idea. I had no idea, not until my 30s. So I began to ask questions, why do you have difficulties in environments where you may feel uncomfortable? Or why do you feel that you don't do as much as you can? Why do you feel this? Because there was moments where I felt that I needed to get approval where I didn't, right? Or there were spaces where other individuals were getting approval and I wasn't. So now I do things to where I get instant gratification and approval, but that comes from having trauma.
Not getting it in the past.
So essentially just being aware, I guess, of what I've experienced and analyzing it in the sense of knowing that if it's played in any of my lack of movement or function, and that discrepancy is there and I can identify it. Therefore, if I have a need to be in control, means that I don't have a need to listen, which means I don't have a need to be to give someone else an opportunity. That doesn't exist, but it should. So that would be a flaw, not a strength. I have a strength as a leader, but I have a flaw in my ability to allow someone else to lead. Does that make sense? So, but where does that come from? I wasn't a leader. I wasn't given an opportunity to lead. So I think so that's what he's saying, man. So just peeling it back, man. Yeah.
To your inner child.
Bro, that was great. That was the one question because that was such a good question. But snap it up for y'all panelists. We got Cliff. We got LaVontae Hill. I have been your host, Ale. And at Common Good, when we do our paper talks, we have a habit of giving people their flowers. So, Cliff, LaVontae, we got flowers for you guys. We appreciate you guys. You know what I'm saying? It's okay to be soft. Oh, and that was too soft. It's okay. You know what they say about sometimes it be like that. But thank you guys. We got vendors in the back. I'm gonna kick y'all in about 10 minutes, maybe less. But I appreciate y'all for coming. That was a fantastic question. Y'all been a fantastic audience. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.